The note said she was eating healthy, but her body told a different story. Doctors at first thought it was a mysterious illness. Her friends thought stress. Her husband thought bad luck. But no one imagined the truth. She wasn't dying quickly. She was being poisoned drop by drop. Pause. A flash of family photos appears on screen, smiling faces, birthday candles, children's laughter, then fades into sterile hospital lights. It took months, a slow decline. One sip of tea, one bowl of soup, one glass of wine at a time. And by the time anyone realized the poison had already destroyed her, she was murdered in plain sight, and no one noticed. Arlington, Texas, a city where families settle, schools thrive, and neighbors wave across white picket fences. In the mid-1990s, it was a community defined by comfort. A place where you locked your doors out of habit, not fear. But beneath the surface of one family's life, something sinister brewed. This is where you'd find U.S. Army Sergeant Blanche Taylor Moore, a woman admired for her discipline, her charm, and her ability to bring people together. Friends called her warm, colleagues called her dedicated, but her family would remember her for something else entirely. Her husband, Raymond, was a quiet man, reserved, hard-working. He trusted Blanche with everything: his meals, his medicine, his heart. When he fell ill, she stood faithfully by his side, or so it seemed. Raymond's symptoms didn't make sense. Nausea, hair loss, stomach pains so violent he could barely stand. Doctors thought it was a virus, then maybe cancer. But test after test showed nothing. He was fading, and no one could explain why. What no one knew was that every spoonful he swallowed was slowly killing him. This is the story of a woman who turned kitchens into crime scenes, who weaponized trust, who poisoned those closest to her and walked away smiling. Until one slip exposed everything. Spring of 1995, Raymond Moore was still strong enough to mow the lawn, take Sunday drives, and help neighbors fix broken fences. But small complaints crept in. At first, it was stomach aches, then fatigue. Soon, he couldn't keep food down. He told friends, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I've caught something bad." They nodded, offered prayers, and told him to rest. What they didn't know was that rest would never save him. Fade to Blanche in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, humming softly. The shot lingers on her hand, sprinkling something into the pot before cutting away quickly. Blanche always seemed attentive. She cooked every meal. She brought him tea, medicine, anything to soothe his pain. To neighbors, she was the perfect wife, devoted, caring, and endlessly patient. But behind closed doors, Raymond's suffering only grew worse. Doctors struggled. They tested for infections, ulcers, even psychological stress. Nothing explained why his hair was falling out in clumps. Nothing explained the violent nausea, the muscle weakness, the sudden weight loss. To everyone else, she was his anchor. To Raymond, she was his lifeline. He trusted her completely. He even told a nurse one night, "Blanche takes care of me better than anyone." I'd be lost without her, but soon whispers started. Family members noticed something unusual. Every time Raymond left the hospital and ate at home, his condition worsened. By late summer, Raymond could barely speak. He called his sister one evening and said something that chilled her for years. "If anything happens to me, look at Blanche." 2 weeks later, he was dead. Raymond's death certificate listed natural causes. His widow was praised for her devotion. Friends told her she was strong, that she had given her husband everything in his final days. No one questioned her grief. No one questioned the meals. But Raymond was only the beginning. Soon, more people in Blanche's orbit began to fall mysteriously ill. And slowly, a deadly pattern began to surface. After Raymond's death, life moved forward in Arlington. Blanche returned to her routines: church on Sundays, potlucks with neighbors, check-ins with friends. She looked like a grieving widow finding her footing again, but whispers began. Strange how sudden it was. He was healthy not long ago. And didn't her father die the same way? Quick, unexplained. The community remembered. Years earlier, Blanche's father had died with eerily similar symptoms: vomiting, weakness, hair loss. At the time, it was written off as natural, but now doubts lingered. Soon after Raymond's funeral, Blanche began seeing another man, Michael. Friends thought it was quick, but grief takes strange shapes. To Michael, Blanche was charming, attentive, comforting. She cooked for him, too, and within months Michael fell violently ill. Doctors noted the same baffling symptoms: vomiting, fatigue, hair loss. This time, one physician looked closer. The symptoms pointed to something rare, something toxic: arsenic poisoning. Once the word arsenic was spoken, the dominoes began to fall. Investigators re-examined Raymond's case. They pulled hospital charts, traced his decline, and noticed the timing. His sharpest downturns always followed meals prepared by Blanche. An autopsy was ordered on Raymond's remains. What they found was chilling. His body contained lethal levels of arsenic. The perfect wife had been feeding him poison. Police now had suspicions. But suspicions weren't enough. They needed proof. They began interviewing Blanche's friends, family, anyone who had eaten at her table. What surfaced painted a haunting picture. She made me tea, and I got sick later that night. She insisted I eat her casserole, but I couldn't keep it down. My brother swore her cooking always made him worse. Every path pointed back to Blanche. Yet, in public, she played the grieving widow, smiling softly, comforting others. No one wanted to believe she was capable of murder. Even her family struggled. One relative told police, "I can't believe Blanche would do this." But people keep getting sick around her, another admitted. It's hard to deny what the doctors are saying. The Moore family, once respected, was now under a cloud of horror. The truth was slipping through Blanche's fingers, and the facade of innocence was crumbling. Detectives decided to act. They watched her movements, tracked her purchases. One day, they caught what they needed: rat poison in her shopping cart. The same substance filled with arsenic that matched the toxic levels in Raymond's body. The perfect widow was now the prime suspect. When detectives realized Raymond Moore's body contained arsenic, they faced a chilling question. Was he the only one, or had Blanche done this before? To answer that, they made a bold move, ordering the exhumation of multiple family members. Tests revealed a disturbing pattern: Blanche's father arsenic, her first husband arsenic, a boyfriend arsenic. The levels weren't traces, they were lethal. Death followed Blanche wherever she went. Forensic scientists confirmed what detectives feared. The arsenic in these bodies matched commercial rat poison. The same brand Blanche had purchased, the same poison hidden in her kitchen cabinets. And yet, Blanche never wavered. In police interviews, she played the role of a confused widow, calm, polite, almost rehearsed. "I loved my husband. I'd never hurt him." But the evidence kept piling higher. Her words could not silence the science. As investigators widened their net, they discovered more connections. Blanche had a pattern. Men who loved her, trusted her, and depended on her. Each one eventually fell sick. Each one wasted away under her care. And each one showed the fingerprints of arsenic. It wasn't quick. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, prolonged, calculated. She poisoned them slowly, savoring control while the world admired her loyalty. One nurse finally spoke out. She recalled Raymond whispering to her in his final days, "If something happens to me, look at Blanche." At the time, she dismissed it as delirium. Now, paired with the toxicology reports, it was damning testimony. "If something happens to me, look at Blanche." In 1990, after months of investigation, Blanche Taylor Moore was arrested. The charges were staggering: multiple counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. Her weapon wasn't a gun or a knife. It was a spoon, a teacup, a plate of food. The town that once praised her as a dutiful wife now looked at her with fear. Neighbors locked their doors tighter. Families whispered at dinner tables. How many others had Blanche touched with poison? And how long had she been getting away with it? The shocking truth was now undeniable. Blanche wasn't a grieving widow. She wasn't unlucky in love. She was a predator weaponizing the most ordinary moments of trust to commit extraordinary evil. And what investigators found in her victims' bodies changed everything. It wasn't just murder, it was betrayal spoon-fed over time. November 1990, the state of North Carolina versus Blanche Taylor Moore. What began as whispers in a small community now unfolded before the entire nation. The charges: the arsenic poisoning of her husband, Raymond, the attempted murder of Michael, and the suspected killings of others stretching back years. It wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning. The woman once admired as loyal and compassionate now faced accusations that painted her as one of the most cold-blooded killers the South had ever seen. The prosecution wasted no time. They called scientists, doctors, toxicologists. Each described in painful detail how Raymond's body was laced with arsenic 30 times the fatal dose. They compared his symptoms with Michael's, showing the eerie similarities. They traced receipts for rat poison straight to Blanche's grocery list. Every fact, every chart, every autopsy pulled Blanche deeper into the shadows of guilt. Her lawyers fought back. They argued the evidence was circumstantial. They claimed arsenic exposure could have come from old pesticides, contaminated wells, even medical errors. They painted Blanche as a victim of hysteria, a grieving woman scapegoated by science. To the jury, she looked fragile, almost grandmotherly. Was she really capable of such cruelty? The defense hoped doubt would be enough. "I remember Mr. Moore whispering," he said, "if something happens to me, look at Blanche." I didn't want to believe him. Now, I wish I'd spoken up sooner. My brother trusted her with his life. And she killed him slowly, right under our noses. The courtroom was drenched in emotion. Jurors watched as the faces of the victims' families reflected raw grief. Each word was another weight on Blanche's shoulders. Then came the moment everyone waited for: Blanche herself. Calm, composed, she denied everything. Her voice never shook. She said she loved Raymond, loved Michael, loved every man she cared for. "I never hurt anyone. They were my family." But the science spoke louder than her words, and the jury listened. After 6 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The courtroom froze as the foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Blanche Taylor Moore, guilty of first-degree murder." The sentence was swift: death, the ultimate penalty for the ultimate betrayal. Blanche was sent to North Carolina's death row. where she remains to this day. Decades later, she has yet to face execution, but the verdict still stands, a reminder of the slow, deliberate evil she carried out. The jury gave justice a voice, but for the families left behind, the wounds never healed. Blanche Taylor Moore's crimes remind us of something deeply unsettling. The greatest dangers aren't always strangers in the night. Sometimes they sit across the dinner table. They pour your tea. They say, "I love you," and with every gesture of care they hide a weapon. Trust is powerful. It can build homes, families, and communities. But in the wrong hands, trust can become the perfect disguise for evil. Investigators say cases like Blanche's changed how hospitals and families view sudden illnesses. Doctors now run toxicology tests more quickly. Families ask harder questions. Communities speak up when something feels wrong because silence is deadly. If I'd trusted my instincts sooner, maybe my brother would still be here. I'll never stay quiet again. That's the lesson. Pay attention. Speak when something feels off. Protect those you love, because hesitation can cost lives. Behind every headline, every verdict is a human cost. Raymond was more than a victim. He was a husband, a brother, a friend. Michael was more than a patient. He was a man with dreams nearly stolen from him. Blanche didn't just kill, she erased futures. She rewrote families' lives forever. She poisoned them slowly. One meal, one sip, one moment at a time, and no one noticed. For years, she smiled while her loved ones withered. The community thought she was kind. But behind that kindness was control, cruelty, and silence. Blanche Taylor Moore remains on death row, waiting, watching time slip away as the world remembers her crimes. She will never walk free, but her story lingers like a warning. Evil does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers and waits. And as night falls, the poison still echoes. You've just witnessed the haunting story of trust turned deadly. These are the shadows that linger long after the verdict. Stories like this remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of never looking away. This is Crime Scene Chronicles, where every case holds lessons, every voice matters, and every story deserves to be told. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's honor the victims together by keeping their stories alive. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Crime Scene Chronicles, and turn on notifications because the next case might be the one you'll never forget.